At the end of last year, I finally finished university, and overall, it was a really great experience. I met some really awesome people, many of whom I don't talk to anymore. I have some really great memories, and in my third year, I went and started this channel. Overall, I had a lot of fun. Whether it's worth how much I paid for it, that's a whole nother question. But in my later years, I realized there was a lot of stuff towards the start I was doing that didn't really make that much sense. So today I want to talk about a lot of that stuff that I wish I knew back when I first started university that would have saved me a lot of time and in some cases, a bit of money. I know that a lot of my audience is around that age where they'd either be starting university or they'd be like in their first couple of years, so I feel like a lot of you guys might get something out of this. While I'm going to be focusing on a software engineering or computer science or programming degree, basically some sort of software development degree, a lot of the stuff I'm going to say is going to apply to basically any other course as well if you just take the useful bit of information and extrapolate it out. The first thing I want to talk about is time management. When I first started my degree, I went into it with the sort of high school mindset of how to approach an assignment, where I would do one assignment, then the next, then the next, then the next, basically working on them sequentially. And I would also basically start them a couple of days before they were due. And this works relatively well in your first year, because usually what will happen is your lecturers are all going to talk to each other in their first year and make sure there's not that many clashes between the degrees. After that, though, it becomes a bit of a problem, because what will happen then is you'll have a lot of assignments that start to clash with each other. You have assignments that have like a due date only a couple of days later, so if you start working on the assignment after your last one is done, basically you'll feel like you're always on catch-up trying to get the assignments done. It's going to sound really obvious to people who already do this, but what I started to do was work on the assignments concurrently, so rather than starting them one by one, I would work on, let's say I have 3 assignments due, I would work on all 3 of the assignments, basically jumping back and forth maybe every day between the assignments, or maybe every couple of hours depending on how I feel like working. And even if an assignment was due a month later, starting at this point and getting at least a template ready, getting that stuff that doesn't really take that much thought done, will actually make it much easier when you actually do finish the first 2 that are actually due earlier and start working on the next one properly. The problem with leaving assignments late is once the assignments start getting harder and then you start getting stressed about whether you're actually going to get it done, the quality of work you're going to produce is going to be far, far less. And I don't know about you, but I always want to make sure I'm actually getting the work done to a level that I'm actually satisfied with, so starting it early gives you that time. Speaking of time, make sure you actually take breaks. I don't mean a 10-minute break, a 15-minute break, an hour break. I mean actually take entire days off where you can think about something completely different. I'm the sort of person who, if you let me do it, I am going to focus on one thing and just keep working on that all of the time. Even though I didn't spend that much time early on working on assignments, I would always be doing something related to the degree. Whether that is going through the textbook, whether that is doing the other course material, I would be doing something related to it. And this is a very quick way to burn out on anything. No matter how much you love what you're studying, or how much you love the idea of the career you're going to go into, if you do not take proper breaks, you will eventually get sick of it. And when that happens, then you're going to just stop working on assignments altogether. So even though it's going to take you longer to get stuff done, if you are managing your time correctly that allows you to actually take proper breaks, you're going to be more willing to actually work on the work properly. A good time to take a proper break is in between due dates. Obviously, don't take a break if your next assignment is due the next day. Don't do that. But if there's, say, a week or 2 weeks between the assignments, maybe then actually give yourself time to breathe so it doesn't feel like you're always on this eternal hamster wheel where work never feels like it's actually over. At that time, I know it can be very tempting to just try to perfect your work and just keep working and working and working on it until that last minute of the due date comes up, but it's not going to be worth it. Once you've already got an 85 or a 90%, any extra percent after that really does not matter. Maybe this isn't the case for every degree. I know the whole point of university is to teach you how to think about problems, but what I found is a lot of my courses were hyper-focused on some specific technology, whether that be jQuery or Java or Python or something like that. And the problem with that is in cases where it focuses on some dead technology, the knowledge you're going to get from that course isn't really that valuable. So at that point, it's sort of up to you to make sure that what you're getting out of that can be transferred into something actually useful, because even if you are focusing just on a dead language, there is still some level of problem solving you can actually get out of that. But it won't be as obvious as some other courses, and you'll have to go and do that digging for yourself. I know it can be very tempting during your semester breaks to just go and turn your brain off, go and have fun, and forget about all the stuff you're learning in class. But make sure you don't forget about it too much. So my degree very heavily reused both Java and Python. And the start of every semester, there'll always be 1 or 2 weeks that are basically a refresher, because they know that most people don't work on stuff like that during the break. But usually the assignments are going to be out at that point. So if instead of forgetting about it completely, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, you do a couple of practice problems to just keep the knowledge fresh in your mind, you'll be way ahead of everyone else once that semester starts again. In programming, Git is basically an essential tool, and for some absolutely insane reason, my degree didn't even mention that it exists until second year, and before that point, there were both group and solo assignments. Now, you can do group assignments without Git. Basically, what it involves is sharing zip files of code and then manually merging the changes. This isn't fun though, so if you can, I highly recommend getting people actually using Git as early as possible. Even if it has to be through some Git GUI interface, at least something to get people using it. But I still recommend using it for solo use cases, because I had a situation where one of my mates basically was accused of plagiarizing someone else's assignment, and because both of them weren't using Git, neither of them could really prove that there was a history of actually editing it. Even for just that, it is worth the time commitment. Now, as for textbooks, I can't speak for other degrees, but in software engineering, textbooks are actually a scam. There is no reason to ever buy a textbook, because everything in that textbook is going to be online completely for free. In a lot of cases, even the questions that are like at the end of every chapter are also going to be adapted from questions you can find online anyway. Don't just not buy a textbook. Don't acquire them altogether, because the way they're laid out isn't useful either. You can find the information better laid out from other sources completely for free. And usually what's going to be important for the actual class is going to be contained in the other course material, whether that be in the lectures or in the practical material. That's the stuff you need to know for the degree, not all this other stuff that just so happens to be in the textbook as well. But if you do want extra materials besides what you can get for free, if you go and look up educational packages online, usually you can go and enter your university email and it'll tell you if your university is actually applicable for that package. Most universities, for example, will just get free access to sites like Lynda. If your aim is to meet new people, attending classes is a great way to do so. However, if your aim is to actually get work done, being in classes isn't a great way to do so. Most classes end up being like as if you're in high school and you have a relief or a fill-in teacher and everyone is just shouting the entire time. Not really a great environment to actually get work done. The way that I would usually handle it is I would get my classwork done at home, and then for some reason I had classes where I'd have to get in-person marking. I would show up for a few minutes and then get the marking done there. So ultimately, why not just be an external student and not have to worry about that? The answer is group assignments. When you're external, confirming your group members are even alive, honestly, is usually harder than just doing the assignment by yourself. So by being an internal student, it alleviates that problem altogether. Almost every lecturer that I had suggested a new IDE or code editor specifically for their course, whether that be Eclipse, the JetBrains suite, Qt Creator, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio. I even had one of them suggest Idle, which is basically a glorified notepad. The problem though is, with the exception of GUI toolkits, There was no reason that we ever had to switch to a new IDE. So what I'm going to say is find the tools that work for you, learn those tools, and learn them quickly. Personally, most of my degree, I went with the JetBrains suite, but if you like Vim, if you like VS Code, Emacs, Visual Studio, whatever it is that you like, find the tool and get good at that, because otherwise you're going to waste a bunch of time at the start of every semester trying to learn a new IDE. And the last thing I want to say is when it comes to writing research paper or anything that requires a very specific format, don't use a word processor. Just go and do it with LaTeX. Let's say you need to use like the IEEE conference proceedings template. There is a word template for this, but the second that you break the template, you are never going to fix it. And it's very easy to break it. If you do that in LaTeX, it's going to save you so much time trying to fiddle around with all of that. This is the one time I'm going to say, don't use a word processor. If you're just writing regular essays, anything like that, feel free to do it. But if formatting is part of your grading, do it in something that makes the formatting easy. That's everything I want to say. So if your experience was maybe completely different to mine, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. That'll be everything for me, and before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Donald, Logan, Michael, Andrew Mitchell, Nathan, David, Carl, Will, Brennan, Chico Bento, Jamie, Joseph, Josh, Michael, Peter D, Stephen T, through Tony Tushar, and all of my $2 supporters. If you'd like to go and support work, them links down below to my Patreon, subscribe star, leave a pay, all that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere, and I've got a gaming channel called Brodie Robertson Plays, where I live stream twice a week and upload about 5 or so YouTube shorts. And this channel is also available over on Odyssey. That's it for me, and I'm out.